Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of REI Behind the Scenes. My name is Daniel Zarazo, and today's guest speaker is Deji. Oh my God, is Deji Adunton. Now, before we get started, I want to share some exciting news with you. I have a social networking platform where if you're an investor, if you're a mentor, or if you're a professional, so the professionals are the ones that serve the mentors, so accountants, contractors, plumbers, mortgage brokers, everyone, realtors, you guys are professionals. And if you're dealing with a lot of investors, then this is the platform that you want to be on because you can network with people in the real estate investing industry. We have a calendar, so if you want to have your events up there, or if you want to see what events are up, there's a calendar so you can find what's going on. You can showcase your properties. There's so much you can do in there. Now, and so get into my bio. You can check out the link there. It's realestateinvestorfam.com, and you'll have a lot of fun. You'll enjoy it. Now, let's get back to the show. On REI Behind the Scenes, our guest speakers are talking about specific projects. They'll be telling us what real estate strategies they do. They'll be running through the numbers. And the fun part of all, you get to hear the problems that are encountered, how they solve them, and if it was something new, what they would do differently next time. So if you guys are ready, send Deji some thumbs up, send him some fire. Let's welcome him on the stage. I can see that he's here and he's ready to go. Can you guys, oh, there we go. Perfect.
Hello.
Hey, how are you?
Very well, very well. Thanks, Anna. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. I'm so excited to hear you. It'll be nice to hear about the projects you're working on. I know you're mainly wholesaling. I'm assuming we'll probably get to hear about the kind of things they've got in there. But before we do, let's hear about a little bit about you. What is your, I kind of already sold your real estate strategy, but what's your real estate strategy? If there's more, what's your experience like? Whatever you like to share about yourself.
Okay. So once again, thanks for having me. Hi, everyone who is joining. My name is Deji, and my primary strategy is wholesaling. That's what I started off with about 2 years ago right now. While doing wholesaling, I quickly found out that, wholesaling was just an exit strategy, right? It was one of the strategies that you would typically take in an event where you have a deal under contract. But more importantly, while being a wholesaler, I noticed that there were quite a number of activities that I was doing that was really valuable to not just people interested in wholesaling, but to real estate investors in general. So since I started up until now, I'm sort of transitioning, and I'm speaking about myself less in the capacity of a wholesaler, but more in the capacity of an off-market real estate expert. So a lot of my focus going forward will be on the steps from identifying the right markets to invest in up until the time when you get a deal under contract. So that will be my focus as an investor, to help other investors in the off-market space.
100%. I love that. And I love that you said that it's one of the strategies because it's very, very true. That is one of the strategies because, I'm sure maybe if you haven't done it already, but one of them is like, maybe you really like it and you just end up keeping it for yourself and you're like, screw you guys, it's mine.
Yeah. And now it's getting clearer, right? What my strategy is going to be going forward. So I look at the off-market space in two buckets. One is acquisitions and then the other is disposition. And on the acquisition side, I look at 10 steps, to getting an off-market deal under contract and five different exit strategies. So on the acquisition side, you usually would start off with identifying what markets you want to invest in. Now, once an investor understands, okay, this is the market that I want to invest in, the next thing is to identify what marketing channel you believe is best suited for that market. Once that's done, then the next step, which is step 3, is you start to design your campaign. So if, for example, you choose direct mail campaign or social media ads, you start to design that campaign. And once the campaign is designed, step 4 is when you start to receive the leads from your campaign. And that's what people call like lead intake. So how to qualify sellers, how to identify the motivated ones, how to discard the tire kickers. Once you get that step correctly, now you're at step 5, which is, booking the walkthrough. You go into the walkthrough, identify, what the property looks like, take your pictures, take your videos, assess the motivation level of the seller. Once that's done, you move into step 6, which is doing the comparables. So identifying what's the highest and best use for this property that you want to buy. So once you identify that, you move into step 7, which is identifying the maximum amount you can pay for this property to be profitable for you. Once you identify that number, you move into step 8, right, which is writing the APS, identifying, all the clauses that you need to put in the agreement. Step 9 is negotiation, and the step 10 is actually putting your deposits down. So that's the 10-step process that I'll be sharing more extensively on my social media channels going forward. And then once the deal is under contract, you have 5 exit strategies. One is wholesaling, which I mentioned before. The second is wholetailing, flipping, holding, and listing with the realtor. So that's how I look at the off-market process. 10 acquisition steps, 5 disposition steps.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. That's great information to have. And so what project are you going to talk to us? And let's make it a nice juicy one, or maybe a couple, because I know sometimes with the wholesale deals, I feel like usually you can talk about a few of them, unless you want to talk about bigger project ones that you've done, but something like that where the audience can get some really good learning. What project you want to share with us today?
So there's actually one that I'm working on right now. It's quite interesting. It's a 15-unit building in Nova Scotia, right? It's not in Ontario. It's not in Ontario. It's in Nova Scotia, which is a new territory for me. Mm-hmm. So I have a few partners that I'm working with on this deal. But just a brief overview of the deal. It's a 15-unit building in Nova Scotia, completely vacant. It's in a relatively small town, but the fact that it's vacant means there's a lot of upside with respect to doing the renovations.
So
right?
This one's a BRRRR that you're going to do? It's the BRRRR strategy for this one?
Yes. So we are primarily looking to wholesale the deal. However, we are also open to bringing on partners to close on the deal. If we decide to do so. But if I'm to give a very high level overview about the deal, as I mentioned, it's a 15-unit building in Nova Scotia. It's currently vacant. All units are vacant. The building is shut down right now by the fire marshal, and that's primarily because there are some fire code violations that need to be resolved. Thankfully, there is a list of the fire code violations that the city has said, once you do this, then the building can be restored and tenants can start coming back in. So we have the renovation codes for what that's going to cost, and we have appraisals in hand. We have home inspection reports in hand. We have environmental reports in hand. So we have all the due diligence documents that an investor would typically have to come out of pockets to get. We already have them. So it just makes the decision-making process easier.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. And then so for this deal that you're looking at, so right now, is it already, have you found the buyer? What stage are you in right now? Because it sounds like you finished due diligence for sure. Have you found a buyer for it yet?
Not yet, but we're actually speaking with quite a number of interested buyers. Now, there's some buyers who, most of the buyers that I know are in Ontario. So quite a number of them are obviously a bit skeptical about investing out of province. So, that's one feedback that I've gotten. But there's quite a number of investors who are interested just because of the numbers. So, we have this at about 450. We sent it out on our list, about 450. The cost to do the remediation of the fire issues probably about $100K plus, based off a quote that we have from a contractor in Nova Scotia, and 450 plus 100 about 550, so you're all in for about 550, 600. We have an appraiser from last year that appraised the building at 870 as is, and about $1 million ARV. So we believe there's a lot of spread there.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. And then so let's start then with the negotiation with the owner of the building. how was that experience? And like, what tips from what you've even like experienced with it? Like, what tips would you even give to viewers if someone is wanting to negotiate? Or actually, sorry, before we do that, let's do, how did that deal come to you? Because like you said, Nova Scotia isn't really one of your areas. So
Yeah.
how did that even come to you?
Okay, so this would fall in, I would say, step two of the process, the 10-step process I mentioned earlier, which is lead generation, right? So there's multiple lead generation strategies. In this instance, I didn't use a flyer campaign. In this instance, I didn't do social media ads. This was more of a relationship play. So I'm working with a few partners who brought the deal to me, right? So we are working together on it. Now, and I can't stress this enough because the last episode of my podcast, the person that I brought on, the way she generates leads is through relationships. And a lot of people downplay that a lot, but it's a very, very strong source of finding off market deals. So in this case, the acquisition channel was relationships.
And would you say, yeah, because you told us this is the first one that you've received. Is it the first one outside Ontario completely? Or have you done other
I would
ones?
say,
Or I would say not outside Ontario, I mean outside of your marketing campaign area. Or have you done other ones that are outside, like that came, like you said, through relationships?
yeah, so, I haven't really veered outside of Ontario extensively. Sometime in 2021, I believe, or 2022, I don't remember. I did one flyer campaign or two, I believe, in Nova Scotia. I believe I did a flyer campaign in Calgary,
But
but I
sorry,
didn't
what I
do
meant to say is this the first time that you get one through a relationship that was like not related
oh
to
no,
your campaigns is what I meant.
oh no, no, no. So it's not the first time people are bringing deals to me. It's just the first time it's in Nova Scotia, right?
Ah,
So
okay.
like some of the deals that I send out are not necessarily my deals. Like people bring deals to us. So I'm just calling it out that in this case, it was also a relationship
Mm-hmm.
that the deal came through, and then it also just happened to be in Nova Scotia, which is the first time, I'm sending out a deal out there.
And like you said, I want to also reiterate the power it is for relationships because when you're in it, you're working hard, you get to meet people and you start finding out like either you'll find out, for example, people you click with or people that, for example, are efficient. Like the person probably was just like, they see how you work. I know that you're very business minded, so you have structures in place that kind of help your business flow and kind of helps with these kind of things. So I just wanted to also reiterate that it takes like for people who sometimes I feel like they may get frustrated quickly because things don't happen, things take time. But one of the things is that is like that one, if you stick with it and you hone into what you're amazing at, then all of a sudden these relationships start building and these deals start coming up, like you said, where it's like somewhere that you haven't even, that you're not even doing campaigns in. And
Yeah,
that's just because they know you, they see what you do, and they know that, you can probably get it done for them. So it's
yeah,
just like I wanted to reiterate that because, like you said, relationships are so important. And yes,
100%.
they don't come right at the very beginning, but as you build it, you start kind of navigating to those ones that either people start realizing, what are your skills, and then one day randomly, sometimes you even get those where it's like you don't even realize and they're like, oh, like I think you'd be so good at this for this or something, here you go, and you're just like, oh, that's great. Or sometimes you build a relationship but then somewhere down the road they remember you and it's like, hey, let's do this deal together because it came out.
Yeah, yeah. I couldn't agree with you more. Like a lot of people say it's in this space that like real estate is a relationship driven game. And the point you notice that you are going to be in the game for a long period of time, I think it's wise to start building authentic relationships because in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, you're going to get to a point where, like, if you don't build authentic relationships, then you really wouldn't have people to count on. So for me, that's one of the reasons why last year I decided to build a brand and start a podcast, to um, shed light on people's experiences and just share their experiences with people in my network. So I think building relationships is key, and in this year, I'm hoping to build my relationships with people, connect with more people, and basically leverage the skill sets that I've built over the past couple of years, just to help people monetize their off-market leads.
Awesome. I just want to give a shout out. I don't know who, B51, I don't know whose account REI, but thanks so much. He just said hi to Gigi, hi to me. He loves the information, or she, I don't know who it is, to be honest. I don't recognize that small acronym. But so I just wanted to give a shout out. Thanks so much. So now let's get to what we're talking about, so you built that relationship, amazing. And then now you're doing the due diligence. How
Yeah,
was that whole experience? Oh no, sorry. I meant talking to the homeowner.
yeah.
Or the property owner. How was that experience for you? Anything new that you encountered, or just anything that you like to share that was, let's say, new for you?
So I wouldn't say like there was anything that was new. Like in speaking with sellers, like everyone says this, right? But I don't know how many people implement it. Like in speaking with sellers, it's really just understanding what their goals are. Like there's a lot of buzzwords in the space, like motivated seller, distressed seller and whatnot. Those words obviously speak to pain points that a seller has. But the truth is, every seller has a goal that they want to achieve. There's a reason why they've chosen to sell off market. First things first. So whatever that reason is, you need to identify the reason. Now, there might be some sort of pain behind that reason. There might be some sort of motivation. There might be some sort of drive. I've spoken with sellers that weren't necessarily distressed, but they were making the decision to sell off market wholeheartedly, and they understood the pros and cons. So in speaking with the seller, it's just really understanding, okay, what's the situation of things? Why do you want to sell off market? Like, do you understand that by selling off market, this is what you have to do? And once there's that shared understanding, and it's not like there's some misalignment where the seller expects to get a certain amount when the reality doesn't, support that. I think those are the best types of deals because it's easy to say, okay, for us to get this deal to close at this time, or to get you out of the property by this date, this is where we need the deal at. And if they understand that, okay, we are solving their problem, then it will be less about the price. Because it gets to a point where a seller's goal isn't really about how much they're making. It's more about, something else. And I
The
usually give this
problem you're
example.
solving for them.
Yeah, and I usually give this example. So I'm an immigrant. I came into the country a few years back. And every immigrant who moved to Canada, not like they were born here, like every immigrant who moved to Canada will probably understand this. When you are leaving your country, chances are that you own some stuff and you want to sell that stuff, right? In my case, there was a lot of stuff that I owned back in Nigeria. And because I was traveling to Canada, my travel plans, my immigration plans, all the plans that I had in Canada, they were more important than the stuff that I owned in Nigeria at that time. So I was more focused about ensuring that my plane ticket was sorted out, ensuring that my accommodation in Canada was sorted out, ensuring that my documentation was okay, like my landing was, ensuring that everything was right. My move to Canada, I was more concerned with that than actually, hey, how much am I going to sell my car in Nigeria? I need to sell my car for top dollar. Or, okay, I bought my car for maybe, X amount. I need to make this amount of my car. I was less concerned about that. In fact, I was willing to let my property in Nigeria, like anything that I had that I wanted to sell, I was willing to let it go at a discount so that I don't have to bother myself with just thinking about that, so that I could focus on what I wanted to do. Now, it didn't mean that I was distressed. It didn't mean I was a distressed seller. It didn't mean I was a motivated seller. The buyer that bought it for a cheap amount could tag me as a motivated seller. But the truth was, I made a very conscious decision to not waste my time with things that were sort of like giving me like
Stress,
was taking my
probably.
stress about things that I was not really looking to focus on.
Mm-hmm.
And just like let those things go and focus on the future. So there's a lot of sellers today that, for example, they are moving from Ontario to Nova Scotia. They really don't care that because they bought their house for 100K, they want to make 250K. Because they bought their house for 100K, they are fine making 200K. They just want to move to Nova Scotia. They just want to move to Alberta. Like the number is less important for them. They just want to move. There are
Mm-hmm.
some who, are moving for other reasons, and they have a job. Their job is paying them times two of what they were getting in Ontario. They are eager to move to Alberta to start a new job. They don't really care that, they sold at X amount. They just want to sell and move. So there's just a lot of reasons why people want to sell. And it's
Mm-hmm.
not just a one size fits all. So once you understand that reason and you're solving the problem for the person, you find that the deal becomes easier.
I love that. That's very true. And it just shows the importance, like basically you're alluding to, is like asking the right questions and really like getting to know what it is that their needs are, because
Yeah.
they really appreciate, it's like if you could just make their lives easier in a certain way. Some of them, for example, are like the other way around, like, I just want to know it's sold now, but I'm
Yeah.
leaving in 3 months. So just do the closing in 5 months from now, where maybe right now that's not really normal, right? Or
Yeah.
others are the other way. It's just like when you know what the situation is, it's like you can like help things get done. And usually it's funny because it's like I feel like the objection is always the price. But if you like dig, that you realize, like you said, they don't care about money. It's just
Yeah.
like, can you solve the problem from them? And if you can't, then the price is high. If you can solve it, then they're just like perfect. They're happy with whatever is negotiated. And it may be like that. It may be lower just because you're doing these concessions for them that they're just like, okay, perfect. You're making my life easy. Awesome. Here's the deal.
Yeah. 100%. 100%. It's not always about price.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I love that you said that because that is important. And now, a question for you actually related to, I don't know if you've always been very good at selling and negotiating, if it was something new for you, but I'm actually curious to know, just because I had changed my views, so I'm curious on your views on um, what makes you feel comfortable with selling, what makes you feel comfortable with negotiating, like if you like to getting into it if you weren't that, or if you are or were always comfortable, why are you comfortable as selling and negotiating?
Um, I don't even know that I'm the best of sellers, right? But what I know is I, I think this also improves with time. It gets to a point where when you're speaking with the seller, you almost always know where the price has to be, right? So, I'm speaking with someone and the person says, I want this price. Like the truth is, like, just by speaking with the person and just being clear about the situation of things, the person knows if you're bluffing or not. Just say, hey, like, do you want this price? And you give reasons why it doesn't work. Now, in those cases, if they see reason, because there's reasonable sellers and then there's highly unreasonable sellers. If the seller is unreasonable, the truth is, you might be the best salesperson, and maybe I'm wrong, but you might be the best salesperson. If you're dealing with an unreasonable seller, your sales skills are irrelevant because the seller is unreasonable. They want a price that does not exist. They just pull the amount from thin air. Now, if the seller is reasonable, and you give the seller like valid points, they would understand that you are not just trying to lowball them. Like this is the reality of things. So, like I've done deals where we got like 6-figure price drops, and it wasn't because we were just throwing stuff at the wall, seeing what would stick. Hey, this is the reality of things. If you want to go with someone else, feel free to do so. But I don't swear, but when you get to a point where there's confidence, you tell the seller, say, I can almost swear to you that if you go elsewhere, this is what you're going to get. So recently, there was a seller who I got her property under contract sometimes last year, and I tried to renegotiate it. She said no, and I offered her, I think, 200 and something. She said no, and I kept following up, but she said no, 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 and she said she was going to list it. And I said, see, this is the way it is. Like your house needs this much. Your house needs this much. Um, there's no way it's not going to need this much. Like it needs this much. Like you can't just wish it away. You know, that's the cost of the renovation, and this is how much it's going to sell for. So there's no emotions there. This is the price it has to be. And then she said, no, she's going to list it. She'll get a better price. And for like 2-3 months, it didn't sell. She came back like, I don't know what you want me to say. It's even worse that it's on the MLS now because now the market has proven that I was right. So if anything, it has to be lower. She said, no, 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 no. And then about 2 weeks ago, she sold for about the same price I offered. And what was worse was the fact that she's a realtor. So thankfully, she didn't have to pay like 5%. But I called her and said, did I just see your property sell for this amount? She's like, well, you know, and I'm like, why didn't you just sell to me like 6 months ago? And she said, you know what, things change. Now, it's my fault that I didn't follow up consistently. And that's why, you know, people say there's money in follow-ups because you never really know when situations change for people. Someone that's telling you, I'm never going to go below 600, that's fine. But they can choose to go below 600 in 6 months. Now, are you going to be diligent in following up every week for 6 months? It's not easy, right? So I followed up with her a lot. But this was just right after Christmas. We had just come from the holidays and then she had sold. So I obviously beat myself up for that. But that just goes to show that the numbers are the numbers. You know,
and if anything,
when I just started,
for you, I feel like it was an affirmation that you're like, okay, I'm in the right. I'm doing the right calculations. Like I personally actually like when I see things go through, if I get to see them to the end, because I was just like, oh, I was right. You know, it's kind of like nice
it's
to like,
happened so
okay,
many times.
I am being realistic, you know, because sometimes, I don't know, with things changing, don't you feel like sometimes you do question yourself? I feel like especially in your area, I feel like you may question yourself because like market changes and you're like, am I pricing too low
Mhm.
or am I accurate in my thinking on the market?
So there are cases where I might question myself. So I'll give two scenarios. Scenario one, and this happened to me. This was in a market that has a closed board. So like for people who are realtors, you probably would understand. If you're not a realtor, there's cities that have open boards and cities that have closed boards. A closed board means you just can't get access to that realtor board. You need to be a member, you need to subscribe. The information is not shared. So, for example, Windsor, Chatham, Sanya, those are closed boards. If you're not a member of those boards, you can't see the data. If you go on House Sigma, you might not see nothing, right? But boards like Toronto board, RAB, you know, Hamilton and Burlington, like Niagara, you see that stuff on House Sigma every single time, right? You probably see it on Zolo or Zoocasa, like you see it there because it's an open board. So this deal was in a closed board, and I remember that I was negotiating the deal and I was looking at the ARV, but the ARV that I was looking at, I think someone had listed. I don't recall. I think someone had listed or had listed a property outside of that board, and then it sold for a higher price, and I didn't see it. Or someone had listed inside the board because I didn't have access. I didn't see it. It was one or the other. I didn't see a comparable that sold right by the building for like 100K more. So I thought the comparable was like very low. So I offered very low, and the seller said no. And again, I was confident in my numbers until another wholesaler who had access to that board saw the comparable that I did not see. And then, okay, I remember now. The realtor that I was working with was not a member of that board. So he was looking at comparables. So he was only looking at the comparables outside of the board. But in the board, like listed in the board, I think there was a property that sold for higher. So he didn't get access to it. And then, I priced my offer low. It didn't get accepted. Another wholesaler, priced his higher. Got accepted because it was a higher ARV. And I believe they assigned it. So that's the flip side where your numbers can be correct, but there might be some edge cases where maybe you don't get ARV correctly and then you miscalculate, that can be annoying. Another angle is if you are confident, but maybe someone else gets the deal and has like a bigger buyers list than you, and then you find out that even at a ridiculous price, it still got assigned. Maybe because there was someone who was on their list that was like a retail buyer. So these things are not, there's no hard and fast rule, but as long as you know the fundamentals, are you making an offer at a price that makes sense? That a stupid buyer buys a deal does not mean the deal is good, right?
Mm-hmm.
That a stupid buyer or a careless buyer buys a deal and makes you a 50K wholesale fee does not mean the deal was good. It just meant you sold it to a stupid buyer, or you sold it to a careless buyer, or you sold it to a buyer that overpaid, right? So for us, the goal is to get a good deal on that contract, not necessarily to hope for careless buyers, right? Yes, if you find a careless buyer, then you get more money. It's all good, but you are not optimizing for that. You're optimizing for 80%, like get a deal that works for 80% of people, so that you get a deal sold. But if you happen to sell it to someone who's like, hey, I don't know what I'm doing, then you make more money. So that's my view on that. So I feel pretty confident with some of the numbers that we run. And whenever sellers say no, I just tell them, we've seen this multiple times. You're going to go to the market, you're going to be very disappointed. And once it's on the market, it's worse. It's worse because now there's price history. And price history is the bane of every flipper's existence. No flipper wants to buy a deal that has price history. Because with price history, there's price anchoring. And with price anchoring, your margins are just tightened, right? So everyone wants to get an off-market deal because there's no price history. You can step your prices and no one knows how much you got it for, except they check Geo Warehouse and stuff. Well, with price history, it's like, hey, you just bought this thing for this amount. I was trying to sell it for this amount. Why are you trying to make this much in like 6 weeks? So
that's so true. Yeah, that's funny you say that. That's funny you say that because I'm actually looking at a deal and it was like closed in November and they're selling it right now. And makes you start thinking what's going on over
exactly,
there, right?
what's going on? What's going on? Why are you selling so fast? Are you trying to make money off me? It's like you
Or
start
like
asking the
how
question like,
screwed over are you, Right? It's like so many questions when you see like things like that. It's like you're trying to figure out what the story is. So
yeah,
let's
it's
move
it's
now
it's
because
really
you've done
unnecessary.
the due. Sorry, let's move on because I just realized the time and I want to make sure we at least get like good amount of all the good details and all the fun details. So now you got into the due diligence part.
Yeah.
I'm actually very curious to wonder how you found out about the work orders that were on. Were they open and they told you, or was it that like you had to figure it out? And if you ever even had that experience in the past, because a lot of the times people, from my understanding, don't share it, and it's like the lawyers found out. I'm curious if you've like how it happened for you, and if you've ever had that way where it's like all of a sudden the lawyers find out and you don't notice it, or I don't know. Actually, I've never experienced it, so I'm curious to hear your opinion on how that works. 'Cause I've never had to deal with that.
So in this instance, they were open about it, and also because as at when the deal came to us, it's a 15 unit building that is vacant. All 15 units are vacant. Now, the chances of that happening is very slim.
Very
So
low, yeah,
if
that's true.
if anybody brings a 15 unit building to you and says, hey Dana, there's a 15 unit building we want to sell to you. Oh wow, fantastic. What's the rent roll? Nah, it's zero. What do you mean? It's vacant. The first question I'm going to ask is why is a
Yeah.
15 unit vacant? So
What's wrong with it?
exactly, what's wrong with it? So there are some deals where the problems show for themselves. You can't really hide the problem behind a vacant 15 unit building. So they were very upfront. They shared, the reason why it was vacant. And then, the city, the fire marshal also would send you a letter saying, these are the violations that you need to resolve. And thankfully, it's just a bunch of things like, like you have the sprinkler system, ensure the sprinkler system is working, ensure you have a fire extinguisher, ensure you have like fire rated doors, ensure you have like deadbolts. So it's just the things that should be in your property, like like smoke alarms that are not there or are not functioning, like some electrical sockets are open, you could shock someone. So those types of things are the things that they listed that need to be done. There's a code for that, it's probably about 100K plus or minus. So the fact that the city has said this is what is required for the code violations to be resolved just makes it easier to work with, right? So exactly what the city has said is the criteria, and then okay, this is the cost. So you have to resolve this first. Versus the city shuts it down. You don't know why. Now you have to call the city. Hey, you shut the building down. What's the issue? Tell me what's wrong. Can I know what the issue is? When there's uncertainty, you're not able to plan. But when you have a list that says an official letter from the city saying, hey, this letter is directed to the owners. Attention, blah, 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 blah. Regarding the shutdown of your building, these are the violations. These are the contraventions. This is what you should do. Like we have that level of detail in the letter. So knowing what they've said you should do, you just have to do them. And then get the tenants back.
Mm. Oh, that's good. Have you ever dealt with a situation that you had to find out yourself?
So it happens a lot, right? Like, when sellers just tell you that everything is fine, and then, you find out that they didn't tell
So
you.
you've had it happen to yourself. So how did you find out? Because I've never actually dealt with that. And I feel like now that I think of it, I guess when you go to talk to, because you can, I guess, do it in the due diligence phase, right? Like for
Yeah.
me, I would have probably, because I never do the check, I probably would have found out from my lawyer and they would have been like, hello. And I was like, oh, shit,
So,
gotta talk to them and renegotiate over here.
so there's usually as part of the due diligence phase. So depending on what the exit is, if you are looking to assign the deal and you're not necessarily the one that's going to close on it, you might not necessarily need to go through all the due diligence steps. But if you're the one buying the deal, you absolutely have to go through all those steps. So, before you get to the point of closing, you almost should have done an inspection. Like you should, not almost, you should have done an inspection.
Oh, that would come in the inspection report?
Oh yeah, like if you're doing home inspection reports, right? So are you referring to fire specific issues or just issues in general? If
No,
it's
I'm talking
issues in
about because that's considered a work order, right? I'm talking about knowing that they're work orders. I mean, like if you go to a house and there's problems in it, or again, I've never dealt with buildings. I feel like actually there's a lot more. I've heard people talk about a lot of work orders in
Mhm.
buildings. I don't know if that really happens so much in houses because I feel like that. I've never had that experience in houses,
Mm.
but I have heard a lot of people talk about work orders in buildings.
Oh, so for that, I probably haven't gone through many of that. I was referring to issues in general, like just issues that the sellers are not forthcoming about. But with respect to work orders, most times the sellers would tell you because like the deal probably can't close without the work orders being resolved, or
Yeah.
like you would find out on closing day. So again, if the seller is motivated and the seller wants to sell, or the seller just has a goal that transcends the issue, a lot of them are usually upfront. Like there isn't really an incentive from a seller to lie about something that's going to help them get their property sold faster. No one intentionally wants to delay a deal. And maybe because a lot of the sellers in my frame of reference are people that want to sell fast, I don't see them hiding stuff. It goes against what they're trying to achieve, which is sell fast. So they almost want to give you as much information as possible so that you can make a decision quickly. The people that might have the highest propensity to lying is probably people that want to get the highest price. They're trying to get the highest price. They don't want you to know there's an issue, and they're like downplaying the issue. But again, when you go through due diligence, you do an inspection report, you do a walkthrough, you probably do an appraisal, you would find out. So for example, you asked about one example. So there was a building in Hamilton that we wanted to buy. It's been on the market. It was on the market for a while. So we eventually negotiated it, I think, $100,000 below listing price. And here I was, so excited. Wow, like building in Hamilton had the perfect zoning, was just by a high-rise building. I was like, wow, this is like gold. Good price, perfect location. It's the best. They obviously didn't disclose that there was like an issue with the basement, like with the foundation. Now, another buyer had tried to buy the deal, and the buyer backed out of the deal. Now, this is not a case of, oh, the deal fell through. The buyer backed out after doing a
Due
structural
diligence.
analysis. Yeah, due diligence. But the due diligence the buyer did was structural analysis, not home inspection, structural. Now, when a buyer backs out of a deal for doing a structural analysis, what that tells you is there's a structural issue.
It's
That
a
is bad.
structural issue, yeah. And
That
you're
is
like, that
bad enough.
requires a deep discount.
Exactly. There is a structural issue that is bad enough for the buyer to walk away. Now, if it is bad enough for a buyer to walk away and ask for a deposit back, I would believe that that qualifies as information to share with me, right? But when we were negotiating, you didn't share that with me. You said it's a fantastic building. And you also said no walkthroughs until it's under contract. So I didn't even have a chance to see the building to even know that there's an issue. So I got it under contract, signed on saying conditional, and then I went for the walkthrough. Now, excitedly, I went for the walkthrough, but again, due diligence. I went for the walkthrough with like a home inspector, with like contractors. And then as we got there, lo and behold, I see the foundation wall, like the basement wall. It's like slanting. I'm like, what is going on here? I'm like, what's happening here? And then I get there, and all of a sudden I see that the next building is an auto repair shop. And then the building by the side is an auto repair shop. The building at the back is an auto repair shop. Now, I should have found that out on Google Maps before putting it under contract. But the implication of your building surrounded by auto shops is the environmental analysis that you have to do, right? If your building is close to a filling station, anywhere that they use chemicals, they use oil, they use gas, you have to do an environmental
It's just a very
analysis.
costly expense when you're doing the environmentals. Yeah.
Exactly. So when we sort of saw those two things, we're like, see, okay, now this deal has turned from a sweet home run deal to like a scary deal, because now we have to see why the previous buyer backed out. And then two, we have to do an environmental. Now, when we spoke with a few people, the environmental company said, hey, if the building was just beside one auto shop, we can make a judgment call to say, you know what, chances are that this ESA will be clean. But when it's surrounded by auto shops, like left, right, center, like about 4 or 5, guaranteed this is going to go to ESA phase 2. Phase 1 is about, I think, $2,500. Phase 2 is about maybe 25,000 or something.
Yeah.
Right. So now the risk profile of the deal just went up. Right. So
And
we
you know
too
what
had.
makes it worse is like when you do the first report, they tell you because we once did one, and the report was like it was like because it was actually a mechanic shop, and but we didn't realize because usually cities also have funding that they'll fund you and help you out to reduce those costs because they know how expensive it is, right? But in this one, they were like it's between 200,000 and $1 million, and you're just kind of like that's a very big range, and it's kind of like. And the building is only worth 500,000. So you're kind of like,
Exactly.
I'm asking for your place for free. Like, like that's what you have to do,
Yeah. You
And then
just
you're
hit the
just
nail on
like,
the head.
oh, okay.
You just hit the nail on the head, because the reason why we pulled out was as God will have it, we met someone at the conference who happened to be an environmental analyst. And we said, hey, we have this deal under contract. We are thinking of taking the risk to do the environmental. And he said, let me tell you something. In his job, and he gave us scenarios. He said, there's a building that we did analysis for. It cost them 200,000 to remove something. And when he shared what the scope of that building was, he's like, yours is surrounded by like 5. So like it could go up to 1 million, and you would never. And the kicker is you would never know until you do phase one. So when you do the phase one, then you get the feedback for phase two. Then you do the phase two, get the feedback. So it's like graduated. So you have to do one before you get the information. It was just like, too complex. Now this could have been avoided if the seller like said something. So that's what I'm saying. Like we would never have bought the deal from anyways. So I believe once you have your due diligence in place and you know what to do, it will be tough for a seller to get the better of you, right? Because by the time you do your inspection, by the time you do your appraisal, by the time you go through all the due diligence, you almost always will find out things the sellers are hiding. So if they were looking to actually, play a fast one on you, if you are a savvy investor and you have the right team, you probably will find it out. It's probably, well, maybe I haven't done enough deals to be in a position where I've been swindled, or but I just feel like there's certain steps to take. That if you take those steps, you sort of mitigate your risk.
Yeah, 100%. And I just want to give a quick shout out to Consult with Check. Hopefully I'm saying his name. He was just saying, good point, my friend. So he's loving what you're saying because he's like, absolutely. So I just wanted to give him a shout out. And we are at the hour. So I want to thank you so much for coming on. Did you want to give any final comments or resume in or share something that you'd like to tell the audience before we end?
Yes. So, I'm not sure how many people know, but we started our podcast a year ago. So on the 1st of February, which is next week, Thursday, our podcast is going to be 1 year. And, we are looking to celebrate that milestone by hosting our first ever meetup. So it's going to be in Toronto, specifically in Etobicoke. And we are inviting, of course, all our podcast guests. So all through the year, I had the top wholesalers, the top flippers, the top mortgage brokers, the top investors, like the investors who are doing great things, I've had them on my podcast, and, they are coming on that day. So if any of you listen to my podcast and, you resonate with any of the speakers there or the guests there, come and meet them in person on the 1st of Feb. For me, like my goal is to be in a room on that day with the biggest wholesalers, flippers, and active investors in Ontario. And, that's what we're aiming for. So quite a number of them have confirmed that they'll be coming. So again, if you are on your favorite wholesalers buyers list, now is the time to meet them in person,
So where can they see this information? Do they go on in your account, or where can they find out about this, or even your podcast?
Yeah, so like on Instagram, like my page is Deals Estate CA. Anyone who is listening, can follow me. We have the link in the bio. Even our stories, like we're posting everywhere. Even on Facebook, Deals Estate, we have an event set up. So there's multiple ways to find the Eventbrite link. But the fastest way for people that are on Instagram right now is just to go to my page on Instagram and check the link on my bio. So yeah.
Awesome. Thanks so much for sharing. I love talking about your wholesale deal. It was fun. It was good to get into the nitty gritties and even just talk about other ones. If you guys love what you heard from Deji, he's going to be tagged on this. You'll be able to follow. You'll be able to see what his podcast is about, his events, networking event, I assume, networking event is about. And if you guys love my show and you love and you want to just know what I'm up to, you can definitely follow me also. DG, thank you so much. It was so much fun to have you and hear about your experiences.
Thank you very much, Diana. Thanks for having me, and thanks everyone. Definitely reach out to me. Would love to chat. Would love to discuss the Nova Scotia deal if you're interested. Yeah, let's connect.
Awesome. We'll see everyone in the next episode. Bye, DG. Bye, everyone.
Bye, guys.